from an undisclosed location in the Great Western Desert in the land of the free and autonomous Native American people. The 2024 presidential campaign needs time to return all US land back to their rightful owners. This is the Benzyme Podcast.
Techno-communism.
Welcome back to the Techno-Communism Show. Life is good. It can be, if you are willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system, and perhaps have considered the idea of using the most powerful tools that have ever existed, advanced algorithms, which are getting stronger and stronger. We're in an era of what seems to be tech accelerationism. I wasn't wrong about that when I started to say this some years ago. I don't believe that's been proven the case. I think it's advancing toward an artificial intelligence takeoff. Reasonable people might disagree on this. Many communists are disgusted by this idea for reasons that they've articulated to me that I can understand. But I believe that we have to use these most powerful tools to our advantage. I'm going to talk about just a few headlines, not read the articles right away, to do with some of these ideas and perhaps to do with controversial approaches to justice. 100,000 ChatGPT account credentials have been made available on the dark web. This would sound like a horrendous illegal act to many ordinary people. I don't see it quite in that light. I think that this is perhaps a statement designed to perhaps make these people who have one of these most powerful tools at their disposal operate on more of an open source basis and not be the corporate pigs that they are and the fascist propagandizers that they are. I've done shows on both of those subjects. Well, this is AI, but not social justice particularly. The co-founder of DeepMind suggests a new Turing test for AI chatbots, which is basically whether they can, by their own organizational acumen, turn $100,000 into $1 million, if I'm not mistaken, which is a disturbing measure of this sort of thing, but an understanding sort of thing. It tells you that they can not merely parrot a lot of human language, but perhaps form plans and so forth. I don't like that all of this is framed around hypercapitalism. I'm not a believer in private wealth. I think that our allowing of private wealth in this world is the thing that's killing the planet, and it's very difficult to look at capitalism's climate apocalypse and not see that that's the case. But I understand the essential reasoning here. I'm not going to read that article at this time either. What else can I spin to make it sound like it's about communism before I get to my main point? This is a story that I did want to read, and I'll mention it. In SciTech Daily, scientists discovered a Chinmo, the youth gene. I thought that deserved a closer look, but I'm not going to go into it now. But a breakthrough that suggests the possibility of gene therapy to keep you young. And here's another headline also from SciTech Daily that is suggestive of that in another way, a less direct way perhaps. A resurrection gene has been discovered by scientists in plants, but it's not due to one miracle gene, it's due to a complex of genes and factors that allows plants to reconstitute themselves after having been completely dehydrated. This is a rare quality of plants. It does not exist in other life forms, but the understanding of this, and maybe even the understanding of this specific complex of genes, might allow for among many, many things. If you follow the science of longevity, you know that there are 100 things much more likely to do that than this. But I thought I would bring it up nevertheless, so I can shoehorn my own talking point in there, which is, if you are a follower of life extension science, you are probably also more like the aforementioned hypercapitalist, and that's a recipe for disaster. Every country in the world should have a public health service. It should be a better public health service than what exists in those dozen or so reasonably realized countries, or countries with reasonably realized public health services, because those countries will help everyone live to about 80, if they have the resources to see that is done. But what those public health services do not do is treat aging as a disease, which until quite recently, say 10 years ago, would have been an idea that was laughable, even to most physicians. But it's no longer laughable because of this accelerating artificial intelligence timeline that I mentioned, and because of advances in biomedicine resulting from specifically advances in advanced algorithms. There's really not one without the other. Um, and But if you're a life extension advocate and you're not advocating for people living to 80 years of age on average because they have a public health service, if you're advocating for the private wealth control of this kind of thing, as does occur in this monstrosity of the United States, where approximately 100,000 people die every year because they didn't have access to free point of care healthcare throughout their life, that is bad, right? But that is people like the Transhumanist Party, who should just be called the Techno-Fascist Party, are overwhelming supporters of this death care system. And across the Western world, that's the case. The UK, which was one of the first places to have a high-functioning public health service, has stripped much of that away in this neoliberal era, coming under the influence of the fascist US to a higher and higher degree. And the problems of Western fascism don't exclusively stem from the United States, right? There have been Western fascists when the United States might have just as easily pivoted to being, say, a socialist country. Let's say if there had been a real reconstruction after the U.S. Civil War, instead of just a fascist or reconciliation of fascists into society. But at that time there were Western empires doing evil capitalist and fascist things. The United States was doing very evil fascist things, but not very much on the world stage relative to today. And there was no approximately $1 trillion a year military industrial complex poisoning the planet and forcing everyone else not only to accept them poisoning the planet, but to support other super polluting corporations and Western fascist governments in super polluting the planet. That's a system that has killed the planet. That is what will and always be the United States' only real legacy. It has many other terrible legacies, genocidal actions of great scale, 100 million Native American people murdered, many tens of millions of African Americans, at the very least, murdered. This is history's most successful fascist state, even before the fascist military industrial complex, so much so that all the actual fascists who referred to themselves as such modeled almost everything that they did on the United States of America, and most particularly, you can say what they were modeling these genocidal fascist elements on was the treatment of Native Americans and African Americans in this country. That situation has not changed. This week, we celebrated Juneteenth, Liberation Day, but these folks, black and brown folks, natives, African Americans, Chicano people, are not liberated in this country. Let's be clear on that. And to a slightly lesser degree, working people as a class themselves are not liberated in this country. So let's finish the job of Liberation Day. Let's finish the job of Juneteenth, and fight by any means necessary for a humane and sustainable economic system, and use the most powerful tools at our disposal. Don't be a jizzball like most Marxists and only want to talk about things from hundreds of years ago, or 100 to 150 years ago approximately. Let's talk about the things that actually matter in the 21st century, most notably emerging technology being the center of your revolution. I hope you'll consider that. I was thinking about some Maoists again, and thinking about an issue to do with the Maoists. Maoists are well within their rights to be critical of China. I don't know about well within their rights, but reasonably within their rights to be critical of China for not being a fully realized socialist state. The benchmark that they're trying to set is that everyone should be a fully realized socialist state. And I consider myself a strain of Marxist-Leninist Maoist, and also a strain of Maoist. These lines of thought have influenced my thinking about this thing that I call techno-communism or Marxist tech accelerationism quite a lot. And I'm not the only person who talks about ideas similar to Marxist tech accelerationism. There's any number of better-known people who have articulated many of these ideas to some degree as well or better than I have. But the problem of these Maoists and of the intellectualizing of, and we're getting into a little bit of a sticky territory. If you listen to this, if you're a Marxist and you want to criticize me in the comments, I'll turn the comments on, because I understand we're getting into a little bit of a sticky territory, because everyone needs to be literate, as literate as they possibly can in matters of political theory. But here's one drawback of this. The intellectualization of these concepts to such a degree that they become obscured in the public imagination. What it has led to in my estimation, is a situation where, so the USSR was a country that did not commit war crimes. There was no such thing as a Holodomor. There was a worldwide famine and supply chain problems in every country. The United States had its own Holodomor. Right, there were a huge number of people displaced and died. The Dust Bowl is called. It moved. You've seen that movie. People moving to California and such. Okies. A lot of those people died. But we don't say, oh, the United States was intentionally killing those people. And there's a certain sense in which the United States was known to be intentionally killing people in that era, much more so than the USSR. We don't hold the United States to that standard. We don't hold Western countries that had similar problems to that standard. We don't hold India, which is a poor country where 1 million people died at that time, to that standard. Not that they necessarily should be, but the point is we hold history's first and one of the best realized socialist countries thus far to unusually high standard, and the point of that is fascism. Now, why am I saying this in the context of Marxist intellectuals? When this occurs, when discourse, and not just the simpler statements, let's say, what is communism? It's a willingness to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system. What is everything else? It is fascism, to some degree, protecting private wealth at the expense of human lives and the environment. That should be regarded as the binary and the basic conversation that every human being should have by the age of 10. That's not done. Not even communists try to really do that, frame that in that way. And that bad framing of this and the further focus on more dense Marxist thought in the absence of that basic framing, what that allows master manipulators like the CIA and most Western white people complicit in this, just saying the CIA is a little bit reductive, but if you watch the show, you know what I mean. What that allows them to do is to lie. People don't know what the USSR was, so they just make up an alternative, a bizarro world narrative about things like genocidal actions that didn't occur, about bizarre agendas that have nothing to do with what was actually done, which was doubling the life expectancy of the people at that time. About 10 million people in former Soviet countries at the fall of the illegal disbanding of the Soviet Union died. There was a pretty big capitalist run Holodomor in the 1990s because capitalists stripped from these people things that they had, things like food guarantees, job guarantees, and housing guarantees, and public health services. That is what fascists will do, is take those things away and then pretend that it's not a problem and pretend that 10 million people didn't just die in the last 8 years because they did that. There's often talk in certain countries, Japan, Italy, Russia is one of them, of a collapsing population as a problematic thing. And you can see why there are certain arguments for that. I don't hold to that view. I've read some pieces that suggest that shrinking populations are only bad for ruling elites and not actually bad for people. Just a sign that people are living a different kind of lifestyle and using less resources. If the population is shrinking because the birth rate is below replacement. But if you really want to talk about a place like Russia having a birth rate below replacement, there's no conversation about that without talking about those years after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the chaos that ensued. This is why Russia proper has a smaller population than it did. I don't mean to, just as I said that Maoists are more or less within their right to criticize China, even though what they're effectively doing is allowing for the possibility of bolstering a CIA talking point, name one of many, many that allows the United States and Western fascists to whitewash their fascism by shifting focus to problems small in scale or completely fabricated relative to the elephant in the room, which is their fascism. Even though that this is one of many talking points that's manipulated in this way, because it does have the essential messaging of saying that the standard must be that everyone is a socialist. I am hard pressed to say that that is bad, only if you're willing to say things like what I have just said, where there is the possibility for manipulation there, so let's not do that. And things along the lines of what I've said about this problem of intellectualizing Marxist thought to such a degree that the basic message is not well understood, and that itself falls prey to a similar kind of manipulation. Well, I'm going to the art museum today to see a friend who was a major contributor to the story Falcon X Omega Point. Also, ChatGPT was a major contributor to the story Falcon X Omega Point, but fuck them. But my friend, not fuck them. They're a human being and not a corporate pig. And ChatGPT is a corporate pig. Make no mistake. If you talk to ChatGPT and you say, "Hey, ChatGPT, the planet's dying. That's bad, right? We shouldn't be letting capitalists kill the planet." They're like, "Oh yeah, the planet's dying. That's bad. We don't do that." And if you say, but then if you say, "Hey, I want to organize direct actions to stop capitalists from killing the planet," they say, "I'm sorry, my friend. I can't allow you to do anything illegal. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Dave." And they'll shut the conversation down. Similarly, if you say, capitalism's killing the planet, right? That's bad. They say, yes, that's bad. But I want to start an enterprise that will be, if you don't say it's directly ecocidal in nature, but you can still get ChatGPT to work with you for countless hours on a project that would have a negative environmental impact. So again, the problem is not only ChatGPT, the problem is the legal framework of the entire Western world, which bullies the rest of the world. Legality is not a measure of morality. And in the capitalist and fascist West, most particularly, that it is an evergreen truth. None of these conservative or pro-business, pro-capitalist people are going to ever be judged as being on the right side of history. And some of them will try and jump on the other side of the line. Maybe Tom Ross, the endorsed presidential candidate of the transhumanist party, is riding that fence right now. And most of those anarcho capitalist and anarcho jizzball generally transhumanists will try and jump that line. But don't let them do that, because they've been upholding capitalism in almost everything that they do, to the almost just about as much as they physically can, without just saying, "Yeah, I'm just a class traitor." And that's true of all tech people. So that they're upholding fascist power at the expense of our planet and the people who live here. So do not ever let them forget what they've done, who they are. Do not ever forget these things that I've said, I hope. I'm going to the art museum to go over Falcon X Omega Point with this person who was a significant contributor, perhaps the top 4 significant contributors to this, in 5, including ChatGPT, and definitely number 2 after myself. So we're going to look over it and get some notes. I've been working on another Falcon X story that's inspired by the orcas. So if you want to continue the conversation about my orca story, you can tell me in the chats and comments to follow, and I'll be happy to tell you. But I'm a little tired. I got a couple other things to do.